All right, so we're on section 16, working with buyers and sellers. Okay. So we've got 4 sessions after today, and as you can see, those go to make and receive offers, negotiate offers, get to close, and plan your future. So we are so close to the end. Today, we're going to talk about success with clients, success with buyers, success with sellers, success with co-op agents, and then we're going to talk about our daily success system. So a lot of succeeding today in our session. Virtually every top producing agent we have ever worked with has a deep and almost inherent sense of service. They have a servant's heart and place their buyers or sellers' real estate experience above all else. They're always thinking about service, and that's from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. All right, so let's talk about what makes great agent and client communication and why is it important? It's important because it provides that strong foundation. We talked about building the confidence and the trust. It sets and manages the expectations proactively throughout the transaction. So instead of saying, oh my goodness, this happened, you're saying this is what we're going to expect next through every step of the way. It creates a peace of mind for your clients and it enhances your credibility. And credibility is everything in this business for sure. There are 3 levels of service. You have purpose, your value proposition, and then your fiduciary. And this allows them to connect with who you are, them to connect with your value, and you to show your value through that fiduciary relationship. So there's functionary versus fiduciary. Can either one of you guys tell me the difference between the 2?
If I were to take a guess, fiduciary is more like, what, like kind of like our moral obligations as a real estate agent in my eyes. And functionary, I would say, is like the steps we take. So I don't know, to me, they kind of pair together.
They do pair together, but there's a strong distinction. And that is being that the functionary is that non-agency relationship. The functionary is that you are functioning as a provider of a service. So you can, yes, help somebody with paperwork. Whereas the fiduciary, that's that agency relationship. You are that buyer's agent, you are that seller's agent. That means you're looking out for their best interest during a transaction and during the relationship. So that fiduciary takes it a step further than just, okay, I could help you fulfill this role. That fiduciary is relational, and it's where you're not looking out for your benefit, you're looking out for your client's benefit in the situation. So someone has to trust you to provide that fiduciary relationship. All right, so dual agency, and I was just talking to Larnetta this morning. She's got a lot listing coming up. Some people like to wait and do a dual agency agreement, have the dual agency conversation later on in a listing. I go ahead and do that up front because if I don't have this dual agency signed, I'm not supposed to market it to anyone at my brokerage, because that means that the seller is not willing to accept a buyer's agent from your same brokerage. It's not just that you would have both sides, it's that the brokerage itself can be in 2 parties to the transaction. So this is when an agent or agency serves both the buyer and the seller. And if you are the agent that is handling both the buyer and the seller, it is helpful to remember your fiduciary commitment, which means what someone has told you in confidence, it remains in confidence. Whereas if you are the buyer agent and someone else with someone else's brokerage is the listing agent, when they confide in you and say, hey, look, they're looking to sell quickly as possible and they'll take lower than list price. You can convey that to your buyer because you're wanting what's best for the buyer. When you represent both sides, you have to toe the line and know what is appropriate to say and what's not appropriate to say, because we're still ethically bound to that seller. So anything confidential that should not be transferred to the other person, the other client, You have to keep that in mind. So it's a little tricky. Do you guys kind of understand what I'm saying here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we do have an ethical obligation, and you definitely don't want to go, oh, well, so-and-so said blah, 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 and I know we can get this deal done. That's, you're representing both sides. So you really kind of have to play neutral in the situation and present facts in that situation instead of opinions. All right, so the first thing you want to do is set the expectation. Can you guys give me an example of what you think of how to set an expectation with a seller or a buyer?
Go ahead, Lorna.
I think setting the expectations are very early with your relationship, starting with your relationship with the client. And that is kind of following through with everything that you say, being honest. Just a few, I think honesty, integrity, just kind of setting that platform very early when meeting them is something that I think will work.
Excellent. What were you going to say, Chris?
Yeah, it's kind of along the same lines, you know, just establishing what you're able to provide for them. You know, coming in with that mindset of helping instead of trying to get the listing per se. And if
Right. Well, and they can tell your kind of motivation, right?
you,
So you can either keep your relationship with them very casual by, you know, hey, sure, whatever, not really, you know, following up. Like I say, it's not their job to remember us, and it's not their job to know the transaction. It is our job to help them remember us. It is our job to help them know what to do. It is our job to set that expectation appropriately. If you get a call from somebody and they say, hey, I want to go look at this property, and this is the first time you've ever talked to them, and you jump in the car and you run and go show the property, what does that say? And what sort of expectation does that set for y'all's relationship?
Well, they're going to expect that all the time. You don't even have an
And
agreement.
when I tell you all the time. But when you say, hey, I'm so glad that we've connected. I'd love to discuss with you more about your needs as a buyer. I'd love to have a conversation with what you can expect in today's market. When is a convenient time for us to meet? What sort of expectation does that set on them? They say, oh, she's really professional. She cares about what I want, and she wants to tell me about what's happening in today's market. Now you bring them in, you do your buyer questionnaire, ask them all the questions, then you can go show property. But if you jump and run every time somebody gives you the opportunity to show a house, you're going to be a showing agent. Right? We want to sell houses. We want to work transactions. We want to help people. In order to do that, we've got to set that expectation of, here is the way we're going to do it. Right? You can go over them with what it looks like to submit an offer. You can find out if they're pre-approved. What is their financial situation? Are they ready, willing, and able? If you don't know that, you can show houses till the cows come home, but you may not be closing a deal with them. So you want to set that expectation. Every property you show them, are you going to show them 25 properties? Or are you going to try to show them 5 or 6? What do you guys think?
Goal would probably be less, you know. I feel like if you understood what
the
if
needs
you already
are.
had if you had everything established already and you know what they want, I'm sure you could dwindle it down so you don't have to spend a lot of time showing them.
Well, and when you frame it up with, I'm sure your time is much like mine and extremely valuable. You probably have a job that you are working and you're so excited to get into your next home. So I'm going to take your list of wants, and every property I show you, I want it to be something that you can see yourself purchasing.
Mhm.
So you're setting the tone, not that you're not happy to let them in homes, but it can, y'all, I'm telling you, I know it sounds really bad, but it can kind of turn into a hobby for some people. When they go and look at homes, they don't really ever intend on buying one, and they may not put it into that perspective. But every time you show a home and you say, okay, what is it about this home Can you see yourself living here? Are y'all ready to make an offer? Does that set an expectation of we're gonna buy a house versus, oh, I'm glad y'all like this house. I thought it was pretty too. And you move on to the next one. Or you find somebody that goes, oh my gosh, can you believe the carpet? And they start picking apart like every little thing in every house you go on, and then they send you 5 more tomorrow. They just want to look at houses.
Wow.
That's a tire kicker.
Yeah.
Look, y'all have better things to do with your time. Okay, you don't get paid to show houses. Whereas you say, hey, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna have this consultation. For you as the buyer, I can make sure that you know we need to be pre-approved. I can make sure that you understand the timeline, days on the markets right now, what's going on. And that way that when we view properties, I value your time. So each property we view, I'm gonna ask you if you're prepared to submit an offer for this. And if you need to think overnight or have some time, by all means, but I want us to have our head in the game in today's competitive market. And I would hate for you to walk away from a property that you wanted and later it be gone. So that puts them in the forefront. It is about their wants, their needs, but it allows you to set that expectation that I'm just not out here showing properties for fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all get it? Does it sound harsh?
No, it sounds.
Listen,
deep.
it'll take you one buyer and you're like, I will never, I will never do that again.
Well, our time is valuable too, so you don't want to get stuck. You know, we want to be able to deal with multiple clients, and if you have one client that is wasting, I don't want to say wasting your time, but if they don't have any intentions on buying, I don't want to continue to waste my time showing them around.
Well, exactly. And the ones that are ready, willing, and able are going to be so impressed by that. They're going to be so intrigued by that they're going to refer you more people like them. When you start getting people and you start showing houses because you want to feel important, you want to feel like you're doing something, and you know what they're going to tell all their friends? Oh my gosh, Chris, he showed me 15 properties last weekend. Hey, man, I just really appreciate him. And then all their friends are going to be like, oh, well, let me send them a list of properties to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely set the expectations for sure. All right, so you're going to review with them the transaction process, the timeline. First and foremost, we're going to partner with an agent. And today's market is competitive. We're negotiating multiple offers. We have different timeline situations, we have different lending situations. You want to partner with an agent to guarantee a smooth process. You're going to get pre-approved for a loan. You're going to set the clear search criteria. Again, it is a tight market. There's not a lot of listings available. So the clearer they can be on what they basically will not go without, what is their non-negotiable, that the easier to be for you. You're going to help them find a new home, make an offer, negotiate the terms of that offer, go under contract, coordinate with all the vendors and the timelines, make sure that all the inspections are negotiated. The appraisal will be done on the property, and then you pre-close and prepare with closing. This is something that I want you guys to, and I'm going to try to screenshot it and save this so that you understand the steps of things.
Screenshot, Bixby.
In coaching, Janelle, were you about to say something?
No.
Okay. For those of you in coaching, come to me as soon as you know you have somebody interested, because then we can talk through each piece of this so that you are prepared when meeting with your client. You don't have to fumble through this by yourself. I will help you with all the tools and resources and this timeline. Just a little coaching plug. All right, set time expectations. Why is that important, guys?
So they have an idea of like how the process is gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't expect like, oh, you know, I'm listing with this agent. I expect my house sold in a shorter time frame than what I actually think.
Well, and you have, when you do the CMA review with the listing, you're going to say, hey, average days on the market are going whatever it is, right? It's 60, 90 days, whatever. And that means from the time that it's listed to the time that it's closed, every day is counted. It doesn't mean it's gonna close in 2 weeks. Average lending situation takes about 45 days. It can take 60, it can take more. So if you can kind of bet on a month and a half when you have a conversation with somebody, that's gonna be once an offer is accepted, okay? So typically it takes a week or two, even in a fast market, for an offer to be accepted. And then you've got to put 45 days on that. So setting that expectation with your seller is important. The same thing with a buyer. We want to get pre-approved. We want to do as much paperwork as we can now. We want to verify your income. We want to verify your employment. We want to do all of those things right now so that when you're ready to submit an offer, we don't extend that timeline that it takes to get everything through underwriting. And see, a buyer doesn't understand that process, but everything has to be approved multiple times for their qualification and when we go under contract. Because technically that financial institution is purchasing the home. They've got to do the appraisal, they've got to do certain things, and certain loan programs have certain requirements. FHA, VA, they have specific repairs and things that have to be done. They cannot be purchased as is. So all this can extend a timeline. You have an inspection period. Most of the time, that's a 15-day period requested in your contract. Well, you've got to get an inspector out. They're super busy. There's not a ton of them in Montgomery. Once he does his inspection, that'll take 2-3 days for them to get the report back. You get the report back, then your buyer has to review all of the items. And when I tell you a home inspector, if you've never seen a home inspector report, it's like 40 pages of every detail of every system and function of that home. Your buyer will be overwhelmed. If they don't look at them for a living, they're going to be overwhelmed. It's going to take them a day or two to sort through what they saw, what they're going to request to be repaired. Then they're going to have a conversation with you on, okay, these are the items we think we want to request the seller to repair. That has to be submitted back to the seller, and the seller approved to do those repairs. So if you set the expectation that, hey, this is going to be something that's not a quick turnaround, it's going to go much smoother for you guys. It's going to go much smoother for your client. And that expectation of each step of the way has its own mini timeline instead of a big timeline, that's going to prevent frustration. There's also times in a transaction where it's kind of a quiet time. Specifically, if you're a seller, your seller has been amiable and they did all the repairs very quickly after the repairs were requested. You've got a time there where it's like back in loan functioning, underwriting. There's a couple weeks where you're not really going to hear anything. And so you need to let your seller know, hey, this is what we can expect during this time, because if not, they're calling you going, oh my gosh, is the buyer canceling? Oh my gosh, is this going on? And that's not the case. It's just not, it's kind of a slow time on that side of the deal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so just touching base, knowing all of the parties to everybody, you need to know who the lender is. No matter what side you're on, you need to know who the lender is. You need to know who the closing attorney is going to be. You need to get the information to people as quickly as you can and set that expectation on your client as well. Hey, if you're the seller and the closing attorney title company is requesting payoff, your seller needs to be prepared to contact your mortgage company and get that payoff quickly so that everything ensures everybody's cooperation. Sometimes our clients can think, oh, we're going to submit an offer and then I sit back and buy the property. And it's not that. It's not a passive activity. It's very, you have to be proactive, you have to be active. And sometimes they have to step out of their work or on their lunch, be available to talk and respond to things. It's a time-sensitive situation. So setting that expectation with your client is going to make things go much more smoothly. All right, we talked about documents. Anything requested by the attorney, by the lender, you have got to make sure your client gets on that very quickly, okay? When I tell you it will hold you up, it is not a joke. They will not pass go. They do not continue going. Without every single item requested, they cannot move forward. Please make sure that your client knows that when you're discussing things. And a buyer will be asked repeatedly to send maybe the same thing. Just send it again. Just send it again. Because sometimes it goes from hand to hand to hand in the back end of the lending situation, and you don't know who didn't give that attachment. So just tell your buyer, hey, if they request it multiple times, just send it multiple times. Don't get frustrated. It's just how it goes. It's kind of like working with the DMV. You don't go in expecting to have a good time, but you come out licensed. You know, you have to have it. It's just part of it. So just make sure that they understand anything requested, we've got to get. We cannot go without. You don't have some sort of magical realtor power that you can wave your magic wand and make it go away. We're really facilitators during certain pieces of this, more so than active participants. And when a lender or closing attorney is asking for information, we are simply facilitators. Okay. Do not, please do not get all of your buyers' employment information, tax information, and start carrying that around. No, they need to hand it to the person themselves or scan it to them or email, whatever, however it's given. Some lenders now have portals and things that they upload their docs to. It is not us as the agent doing that. It is the client. It is not on us. It is not a liability for us. It is on them to do. We just need to make sure that they understand it is time is of the essence and to do it as quickly as you can. All right, set communication expectations. Why do you think this is important?
So they understand like a time frame of everything, or they.
I mean, hey, Chris, after I list your property, I'm going to speak to you weekly and give you an update on how many in-person views we had, any feedbacks from showing, and any online reviews, comments, or views we've had. Does that sound okay with you? You're
Yes.
gonna be like, well, yeah, right? And then every single week, okay, Friday is gonna be our day, Chris. I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna let you know what's going on. If you're busy at work, no big deal. I'll leave you a voicemail with all the details. I'll send a follow-up email. That way, Chris, every Friday, you're gonna know you're gonna get something from me. So if you're feeling anxious on Wednesday at midnight, you're not gonna start blowing up my phone because you know I'm gonna report in on Friday. But what happens is agents go, oh, well, there's no news, so I don't have anything to say. I'm just not going to call them. And to the client, that can feel like, oh, something's wrong. And that's just not the case. So if you're in transaction or if it's before the transaction, you just set up a cadence and a rhythm of how often you're going to speak to them, talk to them and report in. If you're in the middle of the transaction and you haven't heard anything, hey, all sounds good, all's quiet, all's good. Just want to check in, make sure you guys are doing okay, packing up. It's relational and transactional, but you want to make sure that you, just like Lorna has been saying, you do what you say you're going to do, even if it's a small thing. Hey, how's it going? I haven't heard anything on this deal. As far as I know, we're moving smoothly. And then as soon as you hear something, first of all, especially for a newbie, sometimes it's better to take a breath, call me, call Jimmy Ann, figure out a little bit of if someone presented you with a problem you don't know how to solve, instead of turning around and quickly communicating that to your client, call me, call Jimmy Ann, get some resources and have some solutions to the problem, so that when you then call your client back and you say, hey, here is what's presented and here are our options, you can come with a problem and a solution. If you just immediately fire off and call them and go, well, the buyer quit their job, they can't buy this house anymore. What sort of communication situation is going to happen there?
I think they're gonna be panicked.
They're going to panic. They're going to freak out. It is fine. Jimmy Ann on my first deal here at Toyota said, you know what? It may feel like the barn is burning outside, but you can't act like it. And I was like, that has always stuck with me. No matter the situation, and you guys, I don't want to scare y'all, but things are going to come up. I just want you to realize that there's no perfect HGTV episode here. Things are going to come up. There's going to be things that are unexpected that you're like, what in the world? My last listing, the buyer was extremely concerned with carbon monoxide. They bought a house with a gas fireplace and a gas stove and a gas hot water heater. Why? I don't know. They didn't say they were super concerned about carbon monoxide. I had the listing. And as far as I knew, as a listing agent, they were excited to buy this house. A week before closing, they make this obsession situation known. And they are blowing us up about getting the gas company back out, which we'd already done. Checking the fireplace, which had already been done. Setting a carbon monoxide detector, which had already been done. They're asking for pictures of the flame, okay? It goes out of control, haywire. So if I'd have just turned around and called my seller and said, oh my gosh, they're freaking out about this, my seller immediately is going to go, what? Oh, they're jumping out of the deal. They're not going to buy this house. And then they're upset, and then they're upset with me. And I didn't come to them saying, hey, here's what they're saying, and here's what we can do. I'm just coming with a problem, then that's going to make them think, oh, well, I mean, why do we even have her? So if the deal does fall through, I'm still the listing agent. They could cancel their listing with me, but I don't want them to do that, right? So I want to provide as much value as often, as clearly as I can. So instead of calling with whatever problem, I'm going to call with, hey, this is what's happened, and here's some solutions that I've thought of. Why don't you guys think about it? You'll get back with me, and then I can get back with the buyer's agent. That tends to go a little bit better than just turning around and calling and going, oh my God, can you believe this happened, blah, 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 blah. And specifically as agents, sometimes we get a little tippy with our co-op agent, and we're going to talk about co-op agents in a minute, and then we can turn around and just tell our client, oh, they're just being offhanded or they're being rude. Let's not do that, guys. So in communication, we want to set the expectation that we're going to be professional, we're going to be prompt, and how often and what are we going to talk about? Again, if you come into a problem, which you will, it happens, look for solutions first, and then say, hey, here's what's going on, and I'm thinking, here are our best options. Or sounds really good to say, hey, I spoke to my coach and they said this is the best thing to do. Or, hey, I spoke to my broker and these were the things she said we need to do. I can't tell you how many times I've said, hey, I talked to my broker said this is our best bet. That really solidifies that relationship. All right, so set contingencies. So as you can see the little stickers here, when you say, hey, on Fridays I'm gonna call you and this is what we're gonna talk about, or whatever day you pick, also say, hey, on the weekends I do this with my kids, or I work every night till about 7 p.m. and then I have dinner with my family and I start back every morning at 8 a.m. Setting those is as contingencies, but I think it's more boundaries. You're setting boundaries on your working hours. Whether it's in your voicemail or your email response, I don't go that far. I just, when I'm working with somebody, I tend to let them know, hey, we were in T-ball season, the last listing I took. It's kind of funny because my seller had the kid in T-ball at the same time too, but we would see them at the ballpark, but I'd say, hey, I'm looking for this offer. I will send it as soon as I get it. I'm looking for this response. I'll send it as soon as I get it, but it may be after we leave the ball field, or it may be, hey, I'll send it to you first thing tomorrow morning. And they were always, I've never had somebody not be understanding, including this summer when I had my kid with me. And that's just like a thing for me. But they thought, oh my gosh, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so cool to have your kid here. And I'm sitting there thinking I'm not being professional. No, of course, we were just showing a property. We weren't negotiating a deal or anything, but you just have to say, hey, this is what I've got going on. For those of you with dual careers, hey, these are the hours I can show properties. These are the hours I cannot. That's just better to be up in front about. You don't want to act like a full-time agent if you cannot accommodate that time schedule, because when they hear full-time, they think, oh my gosh, anytime. And even if you are a full-time agent, set yourself business hours. It's a life worth living. And you teach people how to treat you. And if you act like you're available every night at midnight, they're going to call you and Larnetta, you have told me you wake up at 4 a.m. I'm so glad. I am not calling you at 4 a.m. Even if I'm awake at 4 a.m. and even if I think about something, because you haven't said that to me, but people out here that you're working with are going to hear, oh, well, Larnetta's available all the time.
Oh, no. And I believe in setting boundaries, even with my clients.
And you know what, 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. maybe your kind of quiet time. You're doing reflecting, working out, doing whatever you want to do. It doesn't you don't have to always be available, but you do have to be clear, consistent, and professional. and just say, hey, this is what I've got going with. All right, so let's set up-to-date market expectations, guys. Coming to team meetings, looking at what's going on in the market, practicing your CMAs, doing repetitive CMAs on your listing or the areas that your buyers are in. That's going to tell you your market data, and it's going to be up to date. You don't want to look at something that happened last year, because Lord knows last year's market was insane. You don't look at something that happened 5 years ago. We want to know what's happening now. And you get that information by coming to team meetings. You get that information by staying up to date with things happening here at the office, and looking at what's going on with the numbers. Is it average days on the market 60 days? Is it list to sale price 98%? What's happening? And then how quickly are we back in multiple offers? Yes, we are. Did we have a time where we weren't? Yeah, we had a slow period, but it's picked back up again, and we're back in multiple offers. Open houses are back on the market. For a while there, COVID really put a damper on, and there were several years there's no open houses. Having those conversations is important, and to know what exactly is going on. There was a time in COVID when escalation clauses came up. People here in Montgomery, Alabama freaked out because they're like, oh, this is not something you could do. Yes, it is. It's totally legal to do an escalation clause. Those that learned how to do one and knew when it was appropriate to use one, do you think that they were advancing in the market, or do you think that they were the ones behind in the market? They were the ones advancing.
Mhm.
So you just have to know what's going on. And by coming to team meetings and things, we have discussions about what agents are seeing and doing. When we have round tables, when we have open forum, that's when we can have the conversation about what's going on. And you guys can learn more, so that when those things come up, you know what's happening in the market. All right, KW Tech allows us to communicate. It allows buyers to see, to request information from you to see what they're looking at. It's really, really cool. You want to be sure to start with your Sphere when you're sharing your app, and making sure that you kind of have like a test subject. All right, and there's 3 steps to gaining referrals through your Sphere. You want to provide value. So, hey, I'd love to share with you the equity in your home. You're going to ask them for help. Hey, I'm so glad that this was valuable to you when I gave you this CMA on your property. I'm asking for you to connect me with anybody you know that could also find this valuable. And then once they send you someone's information, you immediately reward them. You don't wait till it closes. You say, thank you so much for this. You send them a thank you note, you tag them on Facebook, because you're teaching people how to treat you. And the more people see you kind of lavishing appreciation and gratitude for referrals, the more you're going to get. You don't want them to pre-approve somebody and go, oh, only send me good buyers, or oh, only send me awesome listings. You want them to send you any referral, and then you're going to do the work to figure out if that person is an A seller or an A buyer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, we're asking for reviews. If you do not have a Google business page or your Facebook business page set up to do reviews, that needs to be immediate, okay? The Google business page takes a little bit to get verified. Google has to verify that you're a real business. But once that's done, it allows you to send out a link for people to give you reviews. Now, of course, we want 5-star reviews. So when you have that conversation, you say, hey, I'd love for you to give me a 5-star review. Now, typically that will come from somebody that's in your sphere, that's really close to you, that's an advocate of your business. Even if they haven't done business with you, they can do a 5-star review and they can make a comment about who you are as a person. And when you're working with clients and they say, oh my gosh, Laura, thank you so much. You're so wonderful. And I don't know how you don't know how much I appreciate you. You're going to say, oh my gosh, well, that's so sweet. Would you mind? Can I send you my link for my Google reviews? Would you mind doing me a 5-star review? The key number, data shows the key number of reviews you want are 20 5-star reviews. And that's going to do great things for you, because people are not going to read more than 20. All right, this is another script to add when you're asking for reviews. If your purchasing or selling experience exceeded your expectations, would you be so kind to give me a brief review? I'd also like your permission to use this in advertising and marketing. Now, anybody that puts it on Google, of course, it's all published, Facebook the same. This is if you kind of did a private survey, which Keller Williams has one. You'll come across it in our paperwork. It's an old one that's just like literally like a handwritten, a typed out survey. But anybody that's putting it on Facebook or online, of course, you have permission to use it because they published it themselves. All right, seller reviews. Why is it important to have your seller do reviews on you listing their home?
It gives people an idea, the type of services that you provide. With anything that we do now, or any purchase that we make as of right now, I go to reviews first. Even if I've never purchased this item before, I want to see, is it valid? Is it good? What's the shipping? What's, how's this person like? I mean, are they good? Are they honest? And oftentimes if we're doing reviews, it's because we spent our money somewhere. So we want to just make sure that it's a valid, valid company. Somebody, I'm sorry, y'all, somebody's knocking at my door. So I don't know who that is. I'm sorry, I'm actually at work, so
you're okay. But no, that's exactly right. I mean, I will be standing in a store and look up a Google review. Like it's our go-to. And so we really need to be using that to our advantage. It is a free way to market and advertise. And so we just really need to ask for them. And it shows what our value is. Same thing with buyers. You want to make sure that your buyers that say, oh my gosh, Chris, thank you so much. I really personally loved how you picked houses perfect according to our needs. Okay, would you mind taking a minute and writing that down, putting that on the Google review? Because then as buyers are looking, they're going to see these things that you've done to help them. And that's just going to validate who you are. All right, so what are your ahas so far today on working with buyers and sellers?
It's just establishing that relationship and going beyond the personal relationship as well, keeping that thing, because it's true that they could potentially bring you future business. So it's just not really focusing on the work aspect, just creating that relationship as a normal one to me, and everything else will come with it.
Exactly. So you want to set that expectation. You want to show value as much as you can. And I was telling another agent today, anything you do, think about how it can multiply, and they say give it legs. So if you're going to do a mailer, make sure there's like a QR code on it so they can go to your website, they can download your app. If you're doing one thing on Facebook and you're creating an image and you're like, hey, this is my closing, or this is what I got going on, go ahead and put it on Instagram. Go ahead and put it on your Google profile. So you're connecting so that anything you do can be amplified, and that activity can have more impact, basically, in that you're connecting one great experience with a buyer or seller and then asking them for a review that can live forever, and it's validating who you are and your value. All right, success with buyers. So of course, we've covered this already. What buyers want most from their agent? They want help finding the right home to purchase. They want help negotiating the terms of sale and with price negotiation. So price and terms and helping them with negotiation is super important to them. So here is an example of some questions on the buyer needs analysis. Who will be living in the home? You want to list everything that's going to be on there, because that's going to be important. Find a property with a partially fenced-in yard. Is that going to work for somebody with dogs that are outside? Not necessarily. So they're going to need, do they need to do an invisible fence? Do they need to connect the fence? Is the buyer the seller willing to extend it? Those are things that are going to come up. What are the non-negotiables for your home? What are the top 5 needs you have? Do you want move-in condition? Are you willing to do some work? Again, these questions are in our Ignite packet, and you want to make sure that you have those. All right, buyers' lives change or buyers' world changes. What do you think these things mean?
Life change. Uh, something that is kind of like, if I were to take a guess, something that they like need, that's something that they really want.
Well, so it's basically the two reasons why someone becomes a buyer.
Mm.
So something happens in their world that changes, which impacts them, or something in their life. So either they're, moving because of a job, they've gained one, they've lost one, they've retired, they're downsizing. There's a million reasons that people buy, and you need to have that motivation to know what it is. Sometimes we have to have tough conversations, and those are those fiduciary conversations. That ready, willing, and able is a small phrase, but it has big impact. So if somebody is ready to buy, but they're not able right now, that's a tough conversation to say, hey, look, I know when we first started discussing properties, you were mentioning this neighborhood, and now that we have your pre-approval back, it's really more along these price points, and the payment that you want is here. So these are the type of properties we need to look at. That is a tough conversation, because somebody in their head thinks, oh, I'm gonna go look at these houses of $300,000, $400,000, and really their payment tolerance is a $100,000 house. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to have those conversations and kind of get them back to, hey, this is where we're at right now. That's those tough fiduciary conversations. And we show homes based on the needs analysis. Kind of went over this earlier. You're not just showing property. We're not just looking at pretty houses. All right, so here's some best practices. We're going to show only homes that are best property for you, buyer client. We're going to have the MLS listing with pricing information and any included disclosures of every showing. We can talk about the location. I don't mark the properties on a map. I don't, but knowing what is near, especially with someone out of town, you definitely want to tell them closest interstate access, closest grocery stores near you, that sort of thing. Be knowledgeable about the area, and then include recent CMA. So what I do when I'm showing is I'll pull the listing, and then based on their interest, we're then going to do a CMA. If they're like, yeah, I think we're going to put an offer in, I'm going to go ahead and do a CMA at that point. Now, point out potential issues and concerns with each house. This is a liability concern. You are not a home inspector. You are not a home insurer. You are not a roofer. You are not a plumber. You are not a structural engineer. So noting different things, yes, I would keep most of them to myself, unless the person asks you outright, the client says, hey, do you see this there? Yes, I see a hole in the roof. Okay. Okay, well, what do you think we should offer based on you saying that roof is old? That's going to get you in trouble. Okay, so keep your comments to yourself. You're not the one buying the house, and you are not a structural engineer. You're a real estate professional, which allows you to tell comparable market values on homes, knowing the area and helping with resources. If somebody comes along and, oh, there's a crack here in the foundation, or oh, you don't go off talking about, oh, well, this is the worst thing ever, blah, blah, blah. So you know what? We can put you in contact with a structural engineer. If you feel like you want to put an offer on this property, they can do an inspection during the inspection period. Okay, the roof has got a big hole in it. It looks like it's falling in. Great, we can get a roofer out here and request any repairs by the seller. So there's a way of phrasing things, okay? All right. Showing homes means agent interaction. So you're going to contact that agent that has the property sold, listed, and schedule a showing. Right now, most everyone is using Showing Time. It's where you basically request a time to show the property online. I typically do a text message as well and just say, hey, this is Katie, this is the situation. If you are purchasing for yourself or for someone in your family, you disclose at that time, I just scheduled on Showing Time. Is there anything I need to know about the property? call, hey, just wonder if there's any offers on this property. We're about to show this home, just checking to make sure everything's good. There's no alarm, there's no dogs, there's no cats, there's nothing crazy that you can expect at the showing. That way that you're, one, prepared, and two, you've kind of gotten some questions to that listing agent for your buyer. So if you show the home, you say, hey, they actually are expecting 2 offers, that change the conversation with your buyer. All right, so here's a list of things to pack in a showing toolkit. Tape measure, I'm not going to take a tape measure, guys, because again, I'm not measuring anything. That's my mother's in insurance, liabilities all over that. They're welcome to take a tape measure, and they're welcome to measure whatever they would like to their heart's content. I'm not doing that. But like a first aid kit, toilet paper. Do y'all hear me? Toilet paper. Toilet paper. Make sure you have toilet paper in your car. As a realtor, they should give you a roll of toilet paper to keep in your car. Paper towels, sanitizing wipes, super important. Umbrellas. You want to leave a business card at any showing you do. Some of this, of course, is from COVID, talking about shoe covers and masks. But a first aid kit, flashlight, and definitely some paper goods. Super important. All right, safety first. There have been a lot of situations, unfortunately, in recent years with realtors being under attack and in different situations. So please make sure that you take safety protocol measures when showing property. One good thing about making sure a buyer comes to the office first versus just you jumping and showing them a property is you validate who they are. You're able to get a copy of their driver's license. You do, hold on, you guys. Y'all blame Alyssa. She's an interrupter.
Can I say hey?
Yeah.
Hey.
Hey,
She's trying to be sweet, but she's interrupting.
Sorry, it's just urgent.
It's super urgent. Okay, safety protocol. So we have a red file system here at the office. If you call, you're at a property, you're in a dangerous situation, and you call and anybody that answers the phone, you say, hey, I'm at 123 Main Street. Can you get that red file off my desk? We know that means call 911. We know that you're in a dangerous situation. You don't have to say anything else other than that. That lets us know where you are. 2, utilizing showing time, using the Supra E key, those track where you were. Quickly, this is not a self-defense class, but quickly make sure you have, if you have an iPhone or a phone that can find your device, make sure that's turned on. Make sure someone knows where you are. Hey, I'm going to go show properties. These are the neighborhoods I'm going to. If you have a loved one, hey, I'm leaving this last property. Never park where someone can block you in. And if you come in back into the home, don't leave the key on the door. I know I've done it before myself. Just leave the key in the door because I don't want to lose it and then go through the house. That's not a good idea, but just be very smart, guys, and protect yourself, and don't think about, hey, I'm out and about and I'm safe, because there are people who target realtors because they think we just, I guess, have billions and bukus of money. Have something against agents, I'm not sure, but just please take care of yourself out there, okay? So remember safety. Got it?
yes,
Chris, don't make yourself vulnerable.
of course not.
All right. Our job is to sell homes, not show homes. A girl a minute ago just said, hey, I'm going to go show some homes. I said, don't show them, sell them, girl. We do not get paid to show them. I think I've made myself clear on that for today. All right, there are reasons why buyers hesitate. We talked about these being objections, and we want to handle the objections to the best of our abilities. We, of course, are not going to talk them into anything they're not going to do. At the same time, sometimes they're hesitant. They're afraid to commit. It's a huge commitment. You want them to really think through that. There may be some minor detail of the home. That's where you want to provide advice and saying, oh, well, we can get this or that or the other looked at, done. We can get opinions on that, whatever it is. They don't feel like they've seen enough homes. Now, this is a tricky one, and that's kind of hard to handle because we want to tell them that it's a competitive market that we're in. If you let this one go and we go look at more houses, are you going to regret not buying this house? Right? They're in it to find a home that fits their needs and wants and affordability. And if you have checked all those boxes and they still want to see homes, that's kind of a tough conversation to have, that you'll have to cross that bridge when you get there. They need to sleep on it and get the opinion of a trust advisor. Typically, that's totally fine. The one thing you want to have a conversation with them is you want to know if there's any offers expected or already received on the property you've shown them. And then you want to know, how quick showings are lining up. That way you can say, hey, feel free to sleep on it. Take as much time as you need, but just please understand they've already accepted offers, whatever the situation is. That way you can prepare them and set the expectation for that. All right, so facilitating decision-making, you want to always go back to their motivation, go back to their needs and wants, advise them as a consultant and a fiduciary, ally their fears, I understand what you're feeling, you want to solve any challenges or problems, and then calculate the cost of waiting. And that helps facilitate that decision-making. Let's talk about success with sellers. They want to help price their home competitively. They want to help market their home to buyers. You want to help sell their home with a specific time frame and find ways to fix it up to sell it for more. All right, price, time frame, and conveyances. So the seller needs these are like the buckets, if you will, of what you're going to check off that's important to your seller. So the price, we need to know how much they owe on the property. We need to know what is competitive market value. Do they understand how you're pricing something? A lot of sellers, and that's where for sale by owners come from, they think, oh, I could just pick a price and I could put a sign in the yard. And there's so much more to it than that. And being able to show that to a seller is so important. Time frame, we talked about this earlier. Finance deal from the time offer is accepted is going to have at least a minimum of 45 days. There may be some wiggle room with that, but it may take longer. Set that expectation accordingly. If it is somebody who's getting a job and has to move within 2 weeks, they need to understand that they're going to have to move and still own this home. And then conveyances, what's going to convey with the home? Anything adhered or fixed to the home should convey, but then there's things that outside sheds, like dog houses, sometimes really nice ones, playgrounds, appliances, that can all be part of the negotiation and what is going to convey with the property. Please have the conversation. If someone has ornate, beautiful landscaping, that a buyer is going to expect the landscaping to stay. I know that seems very obvious, but it's been something that's happened. I'll tell you that. All right, so this is the reason why sellers sell list. Their lives are changed or their world has changed. So there's always going to be some things falling into those categories. Typically, very rarely is it somebody, oh, I just want to cash out my property. Typically, that's an investor that's doing that. But as someone that's selling their primary home, it's because their lives change or their worlds change. The sellers control price and condition. What do y'all think about that?
Well, they choose what to list it at. We could give the recommendations.
Right. Well, I don't know that I like it saying seller control, because you definitely take a risk by allowing a seller just to say, hey, any price. A tactic and one Adam, our franchise owner, does with his team is he goes over the pricing based on a CMA and the recommendation. And he says, here is the price I recommend. And he writes them down. Here's the price I recommend. Here's the price that you're hoping to get. And here's what I know will sell immediately. Which one of these options would you like to select? Understanding that if we go at your price, which is what I'm saying is above market value within 2 weeks and no offers, we're gonna come back down to this price. Because guys, here's the thing, when I didn't understand this when I first got into real estate, I'm about to stand up, I'm getting excited. Any property you take and any seller you work with, one, we talked about, you teach people how to treat you. So if you go, okay, yeah, you can list your home, you can price your home, you do whatever you want, I'm here to do it. That sets a tone of how you're gonna be. And that's not, a doctor doesn't go, oh, well, what's wrong with you? What medicine do you want? So that's also not what we do, right? So if we say, hey, here's what's going on in the market, here's our advice. If they go list it over market value and it just sits on the market, what is that a reflection of to other agents and anyone else looking to buy? Gosh, that house hadn't moved in 150 days. I wonder what's wrong with that house. You start getting stigmatism, which is against the home, and it's against you. So in all fairness, seller, I know it's important for you to sell this property and move on to your next home. So don't you think we need to do it at market value or below? Wouldn't that make more sense? You're never going to cut them out of, I think they think, well, I'm going to lose out on some money. But that's where you have to have the conversation in such a way that here's what's happening in the market and here's what your home's going to market value for. It's not my opinion, seller. We're looking at what's sold and what's active in the market. And then the condition. Yes, they control the condition. They control if every showing you send somebody on, that house is a dirty, nasty mess. It looks so good online and they don't make their children clean up their room every day and you schedule a bunch of showings. How does that look? Not good. Listen, I've seen people get scandalized that people had their underwear hanging up in the bathroom. Come on, you knew somebody was coming to look at your house, right? But you have to take into consideration everybody is not raised the same and everybody does not have the same opinion on things. So when we went back to communication and set an expectation, hey, seller, whenever we have showings, we want to make sure this home, it looks as marketable as possible. No one expects the home to be perfect, but we want to make sure it's tidied up. We want to make sure it smells fresh. We want to make sure the dog isn't jumping all over everybody. So if you have animals, please make sure they can be put in a pen, a kennel, go to doggy daycare, whatever works, so that a buyer can come and have an opportunity to look at your home in its marketable, fresh state and want to put an offer in. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what they control. All right, sensitive seller conversations. What was I just talking about? Y'all look at that picture. Are y'all
that's
scared
utopia.
from today's conversation? I led y'all through 15 other sessions to get to today, to scare y'all at every turn. You wouldn't believe, guys. Whenever you plan an open house for your listing, plan on getting there like an hour early. Because every single time you gotta do something. I've had people have an open house, not having toilet paper in their house. I had one person did an open house, didn't tell me their toilet had clogged.
Mm.
It's just, I don't know what they're thinking, but people don't realize, I guess. But you want to set the expectation of, hey, we want to make sure the home is tidy. We want to make sure, you know, dishes are at least in the dishwasher, food is put away, because this is a buyer shopping and trying to decide if they're going to buy your home. Seems obvious, doesn't it? Just seems so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great agent-client communication provides a strong foundation for sustaining that relationship, sets and manages expectations proactively, creates a peace of mind for your clients and for you. It also enhances your credibility. All right, if a client violates fair housing laws, okay, we all know. We want to remind them of their obligation. They're not equal housing opportunity, but they are working with an agent who is. We can say we're going to discontinue representation of them. We're gonna immediately write down the narrative of the situation and send it to our broker to keep on file. And then consult an attorney if uncertain. I don't go to consult an attorney. We have errors and omissions insurance here at the company, so it needs to go through the company. But the very first thing, if you come into a situation where someone is not obeying fair housing and wants you to not obey fair housing, that you quickly let them know your ethical obligation, your legal obligation, and that if they continue in their choices and behavior, then you're going to discontinue your relationship with them. Your license and family's livelihood is not worth somebody's ugliness. Got it?
Understood.
Cool. I'm like getting all on a soapbox today, guys. All right, remember your Y4C2Ts. No commission is worth the reputation. That's back to the fair housing and ethical obligation. Okay, so 14-step marketing plan for listings. You want to capitalize your listings by, like I said, giving it legs. So everything you do, making sure you're sharing. You can almost not overshare a listing that you have. It gives you more opportunity to brand yourself, and it brings you more listings and buyers. All right, the message you put out to attract prospective buyers and sellers is everything. Why would they want to contact you in this market? What do they get if they do? And these two questions are at the heart of effective messaging, and that's from the Shift book. So just make sure that you're not only saying, hey, I've got this listing, but where is it? Why is it special? What can someone expect from you? And that way it's just not a, hey, I've done this. It's, hey, here's how I can help you as well. All right, your MLS listing reflects your brand, so get it right. Please, 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 please have professional photography made of any listing. Make sure that any branding is necessary on any social media posts, logos, printouts. It all has to look nice. You have to get any listing sign approved by someone here at the office, leadership. I am able to approve those. It has to have our KW logo on it and the correct information. And then you want to make sure that you understand the showing schedule. So some mentioned pets before. Some sellers have animals that have to go doggy daycare, be put up, or they have children, or they work from home. All that has to be worked around and be reflected in your MLS. All right, so we can import our listings data from KWLS into Command Designs, and it has some really cool stuff in there. And proper signage, we said that, our KW DBA. All right, success with co-agents. We are today a little bit of a longer session. What do you think will be helpful with you being successful with co-op agents? Been the theme of today.
Just having that communication, you know.
Communication. Saying, hey, we're in this together. We both want this to close. You want it for your client, I want it for mine. We're going to communicate effectively. We're going to speak in a timely manner and in a respectful manner. And you don't have to say that, but when you conduct yourself that way, you're more likely to be on the receiving end of that. Always try to be as amiable as you can. All right, that wraps up today. We just went a few minutes over. So ahas to achievement. How has your thinking changed? What ideas or mindsets were new? What do you feel differently about? What was meaningful to you today? How will your behaviors be different going forward? What actions will you take? What tools, models, or systems will you use, and how will they make you accountable? All right, tell me some ahas from today's session before we wrap up.
I think, I went back and viewed all the YouTube videos. I think communication is key, and you have pounded on that repeatedly today. So communication, I think one of the things when you were telling us about the kids, for a real estate agent, and you said tissue, and another aha moment was the sensitive conversation about going into an open house and the house is nasty, and you just would assume that they know if they're hosting, if the agent is hosting an open house, they would know to clean up or have it decent where people can come in and view their homes. And I guess that's not the case. So, you know, I'm sure that would be difficult to have those type of conversations with potential clients or clients.
Well, and that's where, honestly, if you make it part of your routine, no matter you go in that listing and their home is spotless or not, and you get used to saying that, you're gonna say
They
it
won't
every
be
time.
offended.
And just
They
say,
wouldn't
hey,
be
please don't,
offended.
right, please don't take any offense to this. This is something I tell every one of my sellers. Just make sure your home for showings and for open houses are as tidy as possible, you know, that the pets are put away, and we want to make your home shine on its best every showing. And then that's why they're like, okay, well, she says this to everybody. And you're not like, oh, well, you know, can we get rid of the animal smell here? You know, and then another sensitive conversation, I had to have that conversation with somebody. Hey, but that's where doing like a realtor open or getting feedback from agents who show the property. Hey, this agent, I haven't noticed this, and I really hadn't. But they noticed like an animal smell. Do you think we can get the carpet shampooed? Do you think that would be a good idea? You're like, oh, of course. So it wasn't me coming in going, oh my Lord. Now, it may be a situation where you have to go, my goodness, but what just happened on the screen? You do have to kind of wade through sensitive conversations. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate y'all, and I'll get this uploaded, and we only have 4 more sessions left. We'll see you next week. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.